"Ma'am, don't move," Will shouted, voice cracking through smoke. The world outside the shattered taxi burned in orange streaks. "You don't understand. My leg's stuck," Amber screamed, pounding the door as flames licked up the seat beside her. "You have 10 seconds. I'm not leaving you." Tires exploded, metal screamed, and in that deafening second before everything went black, the woman who refused to sit near him reached for his hand. Now, let me tell you how this incredible story unfolded. But before you continue, take a quiet second. Become part of this journey. Subscribe, not just to follow a channel, but to stay connected. Share your heart in the comments. And tell me where you're watching from, because your support keeps these stories alive. Now, let's begin. Phoenix, Arizona. The air shimmered with heat as the clock struck 4:15 p.m. at Sky Harbor Airport. Amber Brendford adjusted her designer sunglasses, tapping her phone screen impatiently. Notifications from her PR team flooded in. She was due at the Silverleaf Estate in Scottsdale for the Tech Future Foundation Gala, where she'd deliver a keynote on empathy in artificial intelligence. The irony of that topic would bite later. "Your car's delayed, ma'am," the valet apologized, "but we've arranged a local taxi service for you, quickest option." Amber blinked, insulted. "A taxi?" Her voice was polished, corporate, but sharp enough to slice air. Moments later, a yellow Toyota Camry rolled up. Its driver, mid-40s, calm eyes, soft-spoken demeanor, stepped out, adjusting his faded ASU Sun Devils cap. "Afternoon, ma'am. You Amber Brendford?" he asked. "Unfortunately," she muttered, glancing at the car's worn seats and the little drawing taped to the dashboard, a crayon sketch of a smiling man and a boy, labeled "Me and Dad." Will Witherman smiled awkwardly. "My son drew that. He says it keeps me safe on long shifts." Amber frowned. "Can we not talk about that?" Her tone drew a small pause, the kind that sits heavy in the air. Will nodded silently and opened her door. She looked at the front seat, hesitated, and walked around to the back. "I prefer space," she said curtly. Will chuckled quietly. "Don't we all?" The taxi pulled onto I-10, sun blinding through the windshield. Amber's perfume mixed with the faint smell of coffee and motor oil, the scent of lives that work too hard for too little. "Mind if I turn on the radio?" Will asked. She didn't answer. He switched it on anyway. Bruce Springsteen's "I'm on Fire" came softly through the static. Minutes passed in silence until traffic slowed. Amber huffed. "We're going to be late. Can you take another route?" Will scanned the GPS. "Ma'am, it's rush hour. Unless you can part traffic with your mind, this is it." Her lips tightened. "You know who I am, right?" Will raised an eyebrow in the mirror. "Someone with a place to be. Same as me." The jab hit her harder than she expected. No one talked to Amber Brendford like that. The world outside blurred. Palms, strip malls, the golden sprawl of Phoenix under an endless sky. She folded her arms, muttering, "I don't belong in this kind of car." Will glanced at her reflection. "Yeah, well, cars don't care. They just get you there." Amber looked out the window, throat tight, unsure if it was the heat or his words stinging her. As they neared Tempe, Will's phone buzzed with a text from Eli. He smiled. "Good luck at your art show, champ." Amber noticed. "You text and drive?" "Only for my son. He's showing his paintings at the Boys and Girls Club tonight." She scoffed. "Cute, and you're missing it for this?" Will didn't reply. He gripped the wheel tighter. Traffic lights flashed yellow ahead. The crosswalk timer ticked. Amber's phone rang, her assistant. "Yes, I'm in a taxi. Yes, a real one." And yes, I'm trying not to suffocate in leather and regret. Will exhaled slowly, gaze steady. Ma'am, seatbelt. Amber frowned. Excuse me? Just, please, put it on. She rolled her eyes but clicked it. The light turned green. They eased forward, and that's when it happened. A truck barreling from the side street ignored its red light. The sound was like thunder tearing the sky open. Will swerved hard, metal screaming against asphalt. Amber's phone flew from her hand as the car spun, slammed, and flipped once before landing against a divider. Smoke hissed from the hood. The windshield spiderwebbed with cracks. Will's ears rang, blood dripping from his temple. "Ma'am, you okay?" he rasped. Amber was trembling, pinned between seat and door, glass in her hair. I can't move," she sobbed. Will forced his door open, gasping in the heat and fumes. He circled the taxi, tugged at her jammed door. It wouldn't budge. "Stay with me," he yelled. Her eyes were wild. You should just go." He slammed his shoulder into the door, once, twice. A scream tore through his throat as it finally gave way. He unbuckled her, dragged her out just as the dashboard caught fire. Amber coughed violently, clinging to his jacket. Why would you risk that?" Will met her gaze, sweat, blood, and sincerity in his voice. "Because I promised I'd get you there safe." The sirens wailed in the distance. Sometimes it's not who we ride with, it's what that ride reveals about us. If you've ever judged someone before, knowing their story, don't just keep scrolling. Stay. This one's going to hurt. And heal. Amber woke to the antiseptic sting of hospital air. Machines beeped in rhythm with her pulse. Her arm was wrapped in gauze, her head throbbed. The last thing she remembered was heat, and his voice shouting, "You have 10 seconds." A nurse entered. "Good morning, Miss Brendford. You're lucky to be alive. The man who pulled you out, he saved your life." Amber blinked. "The taxi driver?" The nurse nodded. "He's down the hall, burn on his arm, cracked rib, refused to be discharged until he knew you were awake." Amber's lips parted, but no sound came. Her throat felt dry, her pride drier. Later that morning, Amber shuffled down the hallway in hospital slippers. She found him sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at the muted TV. A local 12 news segment running a story titled, "Local Taxi Driver Saves Passenger from Fiery Wreck." Will Witherman, bandaged arm, calm as ever, turned when he sensed her. Amber froze at the doorway. "They're calling you a hero." He shrugged. "Media loves a quick headline, doesn't make rent though." She wanted to say thank you, but it tangled in her throat like barbed wire. "I don't even remember what happened after." "You passed out. I pulled you out. And then the fire department finished what I started." He paused. "You said you didn't belong in my car. Guess we both ended up in the same place anyway." Amber flinched. "You don't have to remind me." Will gave a half smile. Not cruel, just tired. "Don't worry, ma'am. I'm not keeping score." He turned back to the TV, the camera zooming on his soot-covered face from earlier that night. Amber looked at him, really looked this time. The man who'd been invisible behind the wheel was now headline material, and it unsettled her. "Why did you even come in after me?" she finally asked. Will exhaled, eyes still on the screen. "Because my son's 10. He waits up for me. I thought about him, and how he'd feel if someone left me behind." Amber's eyes softened. "You have a son." "Eli," he said, smiling faintly. "He's everything." By afternoon, both were cleared for observation. Amber's assistant, Gina, arrived with flowers and gossip. "Amber, you've gone viral. The taxi hero story is trending on Twitter. You should capitalize on this. Maybe post something?" Amber stared at her blankly. "Capitalize on being rescued? Do you hear yourself?" Gina blinked. "People love redemption arcs," Amber sighed. "Then maybe they should follow his, not mine." When Gina left, Amber wandered into Will's room again. He was texting. She noticed the contact name, Eli. "Your son. He must be worried," she said. "He's with my sister. I told him I just sprained something. No need to scare him." "You lie to your kid?" "Sometimes," Will said softly. "So he can sleep." Amber hesitated, folding her arms. "You shouldn't have to lie. You shouldn't have to drive 12-hour shifts either." Will looked up. "You shouldn't have to look down to talk to someone." Her jaw clenched. That hit too close. Silence swelled, heavy but not hostile. Two people stripped of titles and status, left with bruises and honesty. Night fell. The city glowed outside the window, Scottsdale's skyline of glass and gold. Amber sat beside Will's bed, picking at the hospital bracelet on her wrist. "You know," she murmured, "I wasn't always rich." Will smirked. "I figured. People born rich don't get that mad when a car's late." Amber laughed, small, genuine. "My mom cleaned houses in Tucson. I swore I'd never end up scrubbing floors again. I built my company from nothing, but I guess, somewhere along the line, I became the kind of person she'd hate." Will studied her quietly. "And you think that's why you couldn't sit up front with me?" She nodded, almost ashamed. "You reminded me of everything I buried. The working class, the struggle, the smell of grease and old fabric. I thought I'd left it behind, but in that car it felt like it was judging me." He leaned forward slightly. "I wasn't judging you. I was just driving." Amber's voice trembled. "And I was just cruel." For the first time, Will smiled fully. Tired, kind. "Then maybe this is where you stop being that." Amber wiped her eyes, then chuckled through tears. "You're some kind of philosopher, huh? Just a dad who's seen enough to know everyone's one accident away from being humbled." The next day, they were discharged. Amber's team sent a limousine. She glanced at Will, who was waiting for his Uber. "Can I give you a ride?" she asked. He raised a brow. "Thought you didn't like sharing cars." "I'm learning," she said. They rode in silence, but it wasn't the cold kind. It was full of questions neither dared ask. When they reached South Phoenix, Will pointed to a small, tidy apartment complex near a Circle K. Kids played basketball out front. A mural of a desert sunset stretched across the wall. "That's us," he said. "Eli and me." Amber looked at the world outside. Modest, vibrant, alive. The kind of place her old self would have called small. Now it looked real. "You have a good life here," she said softly. "It's enough," Will replied. "Sometimes enough is everything." He got out, then hesitated. "Thanks for the ride, ma'am." Amber smiled. "Amber?" He nodded. "Will." As he walked away, she found herself rolling down the window. "Hey, Will?" He turned. "I think I owe your son a new crayon set." He laughed. "He'll hold you to that." Ever judged someone because their world didn't look like yours? Maybe this story's not about a taxi. Maybe it's about what we carry when no one's looking. If that truth stings a little, stick around. The news cycle had moved on, but Amber hadn't. She sold her Scottsdale penthouse and downsized to a modest condo near Tempe. The world called it a scandal retreat. She called it a reset. Every morning, she drove herself. No chauffeur, no tinted windows. just a silver Subaru Outback humming along the freeway. Sometimes she took the long way, past the Boys and Girls Club where Eli's art hung in the lobby. That morning, she pulled in. Kids laughed inside, sneakers squeaking on the gym floor. She carried 2 boxes from her trunk, new paints, brushes, and sketch pads. A volunteer smiled. "You here for Eli's art program?" Amber nodded, just dropping something off. On the far wall, she noticed a new mural, a yellow taxi under a blazing sun, 2 figures reaching for each other through smoke. The signature read Eli Witherman, age 10. Her throat tightened. 2 weeks later, a press release went out quietly. The Witherman Initiative, a nonprofit funding education and emergency aid for single parents across Arizona. The founder, Amber Brendford. She didn't put her face on the posters. She put Will's name on the banner. The launch event took place at the Desert Botanical Garden. Strings of lights flickered between saguaros. Amber stood on stage before a modest crowd. Teachers, single parents, cab drivers, artists. No tuxedos, no champagne. When her turn came, she took a deep breath. "I built companies that taught machines to think," she began. "But somewhere along the line, I forgot what it meant to feel. A man reminded me, not through words, but through what he did when I least deserved it." Her voice wavered. "Tonight isn't about me. It's about second chances. It's about men like Will Witherman who keep this city moving even when the world never looks twice." A murmur rippled through the audience. Behind the crowd, Will stood quietly with Eli beside him. He hadn't planned to come. Eli insisted. When Amber saw them, her composure cracked into a shaky smile. She gestured. "Will, come up here." He shook his head, but Eli tugged his sleeve. "Dad, go." Reluctantly, Will walked up. The audience clapped, not like for a celebrity, but like for one of their own. Amber turned to him. "You told me once that cars don't care who's in them. They just get you there. I think people can be like that too. You got me somewhere I didn't know I needed to go." Will swallowed hard. "You didn't have to do all this." Amber smiled softly. "I didn't, but I wanted to." They stood there, 2 people who'd collided in the worst way and found something rare in the wreckage. Understanding. The event ended quietly. Reporters drifted away. The desert night smelled of creosote and rain. Will found Amber sitting on a stone bench near the cactus garden, shoes off, toes digging into the gravel like she needed to feel the earth. "You ever think," she said, "how crazy it is that one red light changed everything?" He sat beside her. "Life's just a bunch of intersections. We pick a lane and hope we don't crash." She laughed softly. "You always talk like you're writing a country song." He grinned. "Maybe I am." Silence settled, comfortable, real. Amber turned to him. "You were right about forgiveness. I started with myself. Turns out it's hard work." Will nodded, "Worth it though." She looked at him for a long time. "So what about you? You forgive me yet?" He considered. "Yeah, took a while. But Eli said holding grudges makes your art ugly." She smiled through tears. "Smart kid. Got it from his mom," Will said quietly, eyes glinting with memory. They sat there under the desert sky, stars blooming overhead. No titles, no spotlight. Just 2 survivors breathing in the same night. Weeks later, Amber called a rideshare to the airport for a speaking engagement in New York. A familiar yellow Camry pulled up. Will rolled down the window. "Need a lift?" Amber laughed. "Déjà vu. Front seat's open," he said. This time, she didn't hesitate. She slid into the front beside him, smiling at the faded drawing on the dashboard, the same one that had once annoyed her. Eli had added a new detail, a third figure holding the other's hands beneath the words, "We all made it." As they drove down the I-10, the sun poured over the desert like melted gold. Amber glanced at Will. "You know, you really did save me." He shrugged. "Maybe we saved each other." She looked out at the endless Arizona horizon, eyes shining. Maybe that's what redemption looks like. Not fame, not forgiveness, just finally sitting in the right seat. The car disappeared into the light. If this ending left you breathing a little deeper, maybe ask yourself, who in your life have you misjudged, avoided, or written off? The next chance to reach out might be your redemption too. Stories like this don't just end. They remind us why we stay. The end.